us on the starship Earth and reconnect with the science of the land and stars. From the depth of the oceans to the top of the cedars and beyond the galaxy. Portals and ceremonies, gravitational waves, caribou, highways, laughter as medicine, quantum, entanglement, glacier, sovereignty, hunting, mathematics, berries, fire, crocus teachings, star people, and Pleiades, grandmother, moon. Tellings from Stones to Stars on the Ancestral Science Podcast, a place to learn the sciences of the 7 directions.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Ancestral Science Podcast. My name is Corey. I'll be your host and guide on this journey where we together learn more about the depth of science from stones to stars, or as we like to say here, the OG science. And for this episode, it was a warm, late summer morning here in the lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Tsuut'ina Nation, Iythka Nakota First Nation, and more recently, the Otipemisiwak Métis. We are grateful to speak with Chris Matthews of the Quandamooka People in modern-day Queensland, Australia, about his realization about the importance and depth of culture and country within mathematics, iron mines and nuclear testing, highlighting land rights and Aboriginal voices, don't hike Uluru, deadly coders, numbers as process and action, kinship systems as group theory and algebra, and how to close the educational gap by walking together. Honoraria from this episode was donated to ATSAMA, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Mathematics Alliance. There's a link in the show notes. They do some amazing things over there, so check it out. Remember to tune in next week for Smoke Talk with the pod team, where we chat more in depth about the topics from the previous episode. YouTube links are below, along with a ton of other educational resources and links for you to learn more. I got a little carried away on the show notes for this episode, so there are a lot. So if you want to know more about Aboriginal peoples and land rights and mathematics and deadly math and all that good stuff, there's a lot of links on this one. Again, thanks to Bespoke Productions Hub, and as always, email Starlight for the seamless editing, videography, and audio. And of course, Alex for pod support and marketing. So maybe grab a sea mollusk, which is Chris's favorite ancestral food, or your favorite snack from your ancestral land, and learn about deadly mathematics with Chris Matthews. Okay, welcome to Season 3 of the Ancestral Science Podcast. We are grateful to be speaking with Dr. Chris Matthews today, but always as first, we're going to start with protocols. So Chris, I have some tobacco here to offer you for your time, your wisdom, and sharing this space with us today. Will you accept this tobacco?
I definitely will accept the gift. So thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. And again, as a reminder to listeners, the knowledge that is shared here, it's not mine, it's not Ancestral Science Podcast, but it's connected with the knowledge keeper and the lands that they are from. So if you want to share all the awesome knowledge that is shared here, please reference the person and the lands that they're from when you're sharing that knowledge. So without further ado, Chris, would you like to introduce yourself in your own way?
Yeah, I'm Chris Matthews. I'm from the Quandamooka Peoples in there's a Moreton Bay region, is the English name where we come from, and it's just off the coast of Brisbane. So our traditional country is part of the mainland. I'm actually in my own traditional country and at home here. English word for the city is Cleveland, but Nandibi in our language. So I'm sitting here in Nandibi, and the land of our ancestors. What was the other question you asked me? That's the day. Oh, actually, right. Got to introduce myself properly. Yeah. So what I've done is I am an industry professor at the University of Technology of Sydney, but I don't live in Sydney. So, it's a long way from where I'm living, about 1,000 kilometres. So I visit occasionally, but mainly in the role I've got as an English professor, they allow me to do the maths education work that I'm doing. So this is the thing that I'm really grateful for from UTS. I'm also the CEO of the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Mathematics Alliance. Just for the viewers, we have two sort of groups of Indigenous people in Australia. The Torres Strait Islander people, which is the islands between the top of Australia up into PNG, above Cape York. And also we refer to ourselves Aboriginal people across the mainland, and also in Tasmania down the bottom. But knowing that we have many, many different nations and clans across this whole country, people sort of say there's 500 languages and all that sort of stuff. I don't know the exact number. But one thing that is fundamentally important for us and our youth is to ensure that we can maintain our cultural practices, our language and stuff like that. So what I've been moving into is looking at how we can do that in the teaching and learning of mathematics.
Fantastic. And as a note, Chris has offered to donate his honoraria today to ATSAMA, which is the organization he was just talking about, the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders Mathematics
Alliance.
I'm like association or alliance. I wasn't sure. And
that's right.
It was a toss-up. We will put a link to that website in the show notes for you to check out. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. So there's always one question I ask to begin every episode. What is science or mathematics to you?
What is science or mathematics to me? Maths, I think, was the one thing that helped me get through high school and school in general. So for me, maths was the thing I gravitated towards. And I embraced at that stage of my life, embraced the notion of objectivity within maths and science, because you don't have to talk about people. I find when I was in school, if you start talking about society or anything to do with people, there was a tendency to have Aboriginal issues raised in a very negative way, in a very isolating way. So I was the only Aboriginal kid in my class where I went to school. I actually didn't live on my community. I lived away, and I went to school in there. So those sort of experiences, made me feel. I did have groups of friends, which I often thought would be almost like a Goonies movie, because we had like the sort of fat rich kid, we had the principal's son, we had the bloke that everyone said was gay, but he ended up having more kids than everybody else. But we're all sort of like the misfits, I think, of our little group.
Yeah.
But what helped me personally was to delve into my own imagination and thinking, and I connected that heavily with learning how to program computers, and also the intersection between computers and mathematics. So where I'm going with all this, I think maths in some ways was a bit of a savior for me. I can put my energy in different places. I often talk about the fact that as Aboriginal kids in the schooling system, we're on this knife edge that we could fall either which way. And I was lucky that I could put my energy into something that I enjoyed, but also could offer me a way out of the situation I'm in, and to grow as a human being. Also, the other thing I'll say about mathematics is that all knowledge in my mind is culturally bound. It's created by people, so culture is always a big factor in how maths is represented, how it's taught, how it's used, and all sorts of things. So to me, it's also a cultural artifact, is what I would say. And that for me was a very important realization, because I did go through a schooling where, we believed in that objectivity in maths. There was didn't have to worry about all that stuff, and a lot of mathematicians still hold on to that, and also science people still hold on to that. That none of this stuff relates to me because I just do laser stuff in the lab or whatever it is, In some ways, I find it a little bit ironic that I escaped the races experiencing by doing this, but now what I'm trying to do is put the human back into this subject. And I think it's important for our kids to be able to see themselves within that sort of teaching learning as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. And that, that perspective of math is neutral and objective, and, the culture is removed from it. It's obviously, it's false, because humans are doing it. And there's always going to be some perspective that's highlighted of which obviously, so you were always a math person. Were you like the kid that was, counting on the playground all the time and doing math equations? Were you that kid, or was it mostly in high school that you were a math person?
I was never that kid. I would say, because in my primary school years, I wasn't very good at maths. Mm-hmm. And I think I got by. Like I didn't fail. I got by, but I wasn't, and I didn't really enjoy it. And the reason I didn't enjoy it because it was mainly just process, procedure, and rote learning, and that doesn't fit my who I am and how I learn and what I want to think about. There was no opportunity to think deeply about anything. You just got to learn it. It's going to, it's good for you. So like say, just take this medicine. It's going to be good for you. With not realizing what you got the problem, what the medicine's for, even.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No problem solving, no critical thinking, right? You're just regurgitating information. Yeah.
Well, they sort of say they do by worded problems, but it's not really. There's no way to explore these sort of these ideas. What was the question again? I think I got off track a bit.
Just if you're always a math person when you were a kid.
That's right, math person. Yeah. Yeah, so what I was going to say there is that what made me click with mathematics was when I started doing algebra in about year 8 here in Australia, and my initial reaction this is a lot easier, and then also I think retrospectively that it allowed me to sort of I wouldn't say relearn, but sort of understand why we're doing a lot of stuff in primary school and how it fitted in with what you were doing. And I think I gravitated toward algebra more because it was more about structure and patterning within that sort of thing. I don't mean necessarily a pattern of dots, but you could see the structure and the pattern of the mathematics. So I think for me that was a good realization. I started to do a lot better than my peers in the classroom, which I think important for me in my sense of self-confidence with just being a person, not even just about maths, just the fact that I knew I could do this and they couldn't, was good for me. And that's where my journey really started and accelerated. And I was also weirdly interested in this sort of crossover between programming and mathematics, where they're teaching you how to do numerical integration or differentiation or something like that. So I just found that stuff interesting, and when I reflect on that too, it's like creating your own little window into the world is the way I saw it. You can see patterns emerge that do exist outside, but how can this series of numbers and computer program replicate something like that? And that sort of fascinated me, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, my mind does not work like that. But I remember when I was in school, always thinking about like how ridiculous the math problems were, like the word problems. It's like, I don't need, why we're talking about 5,000 watermelons? It's ridiculous. And then thinking recently about how capitalistic it is, where it's about more money, about, building fences, about, the faster trains. Like, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, there's again that reinforcement of a certain culture. It's not.
Yeah. Like when I was doing my PhD, actually did my PhD in applied mathematics, and I was doing a project on looking at protecting groundwater system, which is a good thing, from waste that's dumped on the land. So we're designing covers to divert water away from that waste, so it won't infiltrate into the groundwater. But about halfway through, I had a little bit of a dilemma because I said to my supervisor, I said, if I theoretically make this line at 100%, it'll guarantee that it won't pollute groundwater. Does that justify the society then to start mining other places? And and the response from that is that we don't worry about that, Chris. We're the maths people. The social scientists are the one to handle that. And so there's a really strong disconnect, and there's no responsibility within what you're doing. So
yeah, it's that siloing of subjects and perspectives, right? The words.
Exactly.
Interesting. So, moral of the story is you didn't do that, or did you do that?
No, well, I had to finish my PhD, and I didn't build the capital on it, that's for sure. but it did start to make me question a lot of things. Put it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's some of the reasons that I moved into maths education for our kids more than doing what I was doing too. Yeah,
absolutely. So you sounds like you started more in, quote, traditional standard global Western mathematics and, computer programming and whatnot. Was there, and now you're doing more, cultural relational mathematics during mathematics. Was there an aha moment that, changed that trajectory or made you realize or reconnect with the mathematics of the land or with your culture?
I think when I reflect back on what we do as for our own people, so a lot of our people live on Minjerribah, which is Stradbroke Island in English. That's where the old mission was. So it's a bit similar to reserves, I'm assuming, where we, part of the colonisation process is they put everybody on one spot so they could manage those people and heavily manage those people. To the point where they, weren't giving money. You weren't giving money for their work, or not a full pay anyway. To deciding who marries who, even that's the state decide those things. You had to get permission, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. As I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a bit vague. So what was the question again?
A moment of aha that reconnected you.
Oh, yeah, the aha moment. Yeah. So I suppose what I'm trying to say there is that. I think I did go on a sidetrack then, but the thing that I think from our own people's way of thinking is that we're very much into that. It's for me as someone growing up, we did talk a lot about the system that's there as what we call Minjerribah, all the environmental systems, whether it's oysters or fish or whatever. But also I saw it, you see it manifested in the fact that our people love games and love working out strategies and, that sort of stuff. So I think what I'm trying to say here is I think I grew up with that sort of a strong mathematical thinking, not being able to name it as mathematical thinking. Because we're always into puzzles, always into these other things that have that requirement for it. So retrospectively, I see that as, the fact that we do and have that type of thinking that lends itself to be mathematicians if we choose to be. In terms of connecting, in terms of maths itself, my aha moment I already talked about was algebra. But then talking about the fact that the connection with culture, because I pretty much bought into this, this idea of it being, acultural or totally neutral or whatever.
Yeah.
That there was another academic called Ailey Morton Robertson actually handed me a paper from New Zealand that talked about Maori mathematics. And I thought, what the hell is that? Never thought about that before. And that sort of, for me, started that journey of thinking in that direction. And I don't know whether it happens in your country, but I was also pretty much the only Aboriginal staff within the science faculty at the university I was at. And what ended up happening was that I wasn't very heavily supported within the maths group. And I've always wondered whether that's because of who I was as an Aboriginal person, but no, you just niggles at the back of your mind. There's no way that you could say this happened to say that,
Yeah.
but it's always niggled in the back of my mind. Also, home moments. Well, I don't know why I'm saying this now. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
So so I got that paper. So that's right. I'm going. So what happens then is that we get put into doing all the stuff around equity or social this, social that, because you're the only one that's in the faculty, so you got to go and do those things. So cutting a long story short, what I ended up falling into is I started the first Indigenous research network at that university. But then, for my sins, I suppose, I don't know, I started to be the one-stop shop for everything across the whole university. And everybody was ringing me for a whole range of things. I was sitting on ethics committee. I was looking at indigenising curriculum through the whole lot of the university, whole of curriculum approach type thing.
Yeah.
So I was having all these conversations with people, but also still getting paid at like a senior lecturer level, which is not very high up in our system. And even one person said to me, he said, "You're doing the job of a professor. You shouldn't be doing all this stuff."
Probably multiple professors.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
Yeah, but we fall into that trap. I know I have, and I know other people from our community do that. We're doing it for a particular reason to help shape and transform these institutions, so that we can have more Indigenous people come and do things. Also stuff that's connected to us and our communities. So we do it for that really strong goodwill, not realizing that on the other end they're just just want to tick the box and get it done.
Yeah.
I suppose I wouldn't say that, but we do realize that, but we use those opportunities to try and push the boundaries, I suppose. It was my work around indigenising curriculum, and also this paper that Aileen gave me that started to think about a lot of stuff. And I did realise that I can't do it within this institution. There's no way I can do it inside this institution.
Yeah.
So I talked to my partner, my wife, Catherine, and I said, "Look, how do you feel about me?" Because at that time, ATSMA had just started. It was a non-profit organisation. We didn't have much money. They couldn't employ me. But what I did, I took a leap of faith and quit my job and tried to make ATSMA work. We still had little kids and babies and all that sort of stuff. Rent to pay, all that stuff. But I think the ancestors were on my side, because I'll never forget it. As soon as I drove out of the university I was in, I got a phone call, and they basically saying to me, "We got a job for you," a contract job, for ATSM. Yeah. So we started doing STEM camps across New South Wales, which enabled us to be able to. I got paid as a consultant, put some money into ATSMA, but also at the same time we because I had a strong network of Aboriginal people within the STEM fields, and also kept on looking for people. We were able to sort of create these STEM camps where every workshop was run by Indigenous people from different parts of our country. So that started a whole new thing for us in that regard. And I already said, I think that we're doing one up in the Kimberley Sands. We've got about 150 kids going to come to that one.
150?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And because they're very remote, these people have, the mob up there don't get these sort of opportunities very often.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we got this big influx of kids. Yeah. So it's going to be a fun 3 days. We have to over 3 days, and we're going to do a whole range of activities with the kids.
Is it one theme, or is there multiple things that you do over there?
No, I want them to experience different things, Yeah. So we've got Deadly Coders people coming in, and they're going to do some programming stuff with them. We've got also Winyama, which is also people who work with a lot of Aboriginal rangers, where they use monitoring things like drones and other technology to look at how they monitor some country.
Cool.
There's also what are some of the other activities? But anyway, what I'm trying to say there, the one that's going to be really exciting too is I don't know if you heard of Murajuga, but in Western Australia, where the Kimberleys are, not long ago, I think it was Rio Tinto actually blew up a whole lot of sacred sites. They just blew it up. And that was a very sad thing. But I suppose on the other side of that coin is that people are very vigilant now about protecting the sites from these people. Yeah. I think they probably already were vigilant, but it actually put such a sour taste within the. I mean, they were exposed pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And same with the Western Australian government, that they don't want to take that risk again. So Murujuga was another one that just come up recently. So it just recently got a World Heritage listing through UNESCO. But to do that, they had to get the people worked with the scientists at Curtin University to get evidence to show that a whole range of things, that pollution won't damage it, that it was already culturally significant and that people could talk to that. Yeah. But just reassuring that the industry activities that were near it weren't affecting it so that they can get World Heritage listing, which sounds a bit crazy. It's almost like saying, if it's going to be damaged anyway, we don't want to list it, that sort of thing. But anyway, they got that, so it has to be protected. Wow. Well, as much as they put their word forward, they don't always trust the word, but hopefully. So anyway, what I'm going to is that they're going to have that team come up and do specific activities with kids to show how they protect that sacred site. So
that's great. That's so important, and I'm glad something good came out of that tragedy. How do you? I guess is there in that site or other sites? I know there's some places, especially here, where there's not something physical that's like, this is a sacred site. You can see there's either, a Tipi ring or, some monument or something where it's like, we know this is where there's ancestors buried, but I'm not going to dig them up to show you. I feel like that's one of the biggest barriers here with classifying sacred sites. Is that similar there?
Because they don't know the person's there, they don't trust you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's like, just because you're trusting the word of this community that this is a sacred site, that this is where we hold ceremonies, that this rock is sacred, but there's nothing observable that I can see that we can verify that this is a sacred site, right? And
and I think that there is Uluru is a perfect example of that. There are a lot of people, it's just a big magnificent rock sitting in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
They've I don't know if you heard the whole story around Uluru, but tourists have been climbing it ever since it opened up to tourism. But the local people were saying you can't climb it because it's sacred to us and all that sort of stuff. So it was a really interesting thing where the elders are very generous, is what I can say, because about 10, 15 years ago, they just asked people to make the right choice. They just, please don't climb it because it's sacred to us.
Wow.
So they did that for about 10 or 15 years, and they come to the date, then they must have said, well, we can't, you're obviously not listening to us or trusting us.
I was hoping you were saying nobody climbed it again.
No. So what they actually did is they actually shut it down. They said you can't even, set one foot on it anymore. You can't do this.
Is that around COVID or like shortly after? I remember hearing something about that.
It wasn't very long ago, sort of around that. So you get all these other right-wing politicians in Australia actually, getting up there and saying, this is not just theirs, it's ours, and all that sort of stuff. We've got the right to climb, So there's still a lot of that debate happening within Australia when it comes to sacred sites, and a lot of people think we make it up so that we can maintain land and country, There's all these sort of things that happen, I think. For your viewers, I'm hoping I'm going to ramble too much, but Australia was settled on the premise of terra nullius, which in Latin means empty land. So we weren't even considered a people. And we were colonized. Arthur Phillip put his first flag down in Sydney in about 1788. So we Europeans haven't been here that long in that sense. Yeah, it's only been a couple of 100 years they first set foot on it.
What year was that?
Some parts of the country. Sorry?
What year was that?
1788. So what's that now? 240 years? is when they first put their foot on it. And up where I come from, they went up here until about 1830s. So further in other remote parts of this country, they weren't even there till 1920s or 30s. So we're quite recent colonisation here in Australia. Because compared to your country, I think you've been doing it for hundreds of years, haven't you? Dealing with this.
Well, I mean, Canada is pretty new, only like 150 something years.
Oh, yes,
date that I don't care about, but but similar that terra nullius, that empty land manifests destiny, going back to like the papal bulls of the doctrine of discovery, right? Where whoever's there quote first and doesn't practice a certain religion, then they have the right to take land and people, really.
So what I'm really saying here is Australia really hasn't embraced that history, or don't really recognise it, or even though we're in the High Court, terra nullius got overturned, and that started the whole Native Title Act, where we can, and this is another thing, we have to prove to the courts that we have a continuing connection to the country that we're on. If there's any point that's been cut off by colonisation, and they say it's no longer yours, it's a bit screwed up, really. So a lot of Aboriginal people don't like dealing with native title. Our community did, and so we got native title on parts of the country that we got here. But what I'm trying to say here is that since Australia has embraced this history, it makes it very difficult to then understand who Aboriginal people are, to understand the culture, to understand, why these things are sacred. All this stuff is still, we're just haven't got anywhere near it in Australia. They still see us as hunter-gatherers that only threw sticks around and things like that is the sort of thing you'll get through social media. Yeah. So they don't think that we're intelligent people or have anything to offer.
Yeah. That sounds unfortunately similar to here. Canada did sign UNDRIP, finally, United Nations Declaration for Rights of Indigenous Peoples, I think 2021, June 21st. And now, although we elected a Liberal government, sounds like there's a little bit of BS there. So, and a lot of that is, free prior informed consent with land and development and whatnot. So a little concerned as to where that's going. So unfortunately sounds a bit similar. When you mentioned terra nullius, I'm scared to ask this, but I'm going to do it. Have you know the movie Barbecue Area?
Yes, of course.
Is that a good thing? It's good. I showed it to my class.
Aboriginal people made it, so it was good. That it's its time and place. Because they made it about?
It's like 82. Yeah,
82. Yeah,
unbelievable. In 1982.
Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable. I will link it in the show notes. It's this just flip colonization, and it's I can't even describe it. It's fantastic. I show it to my class every year, and I love how it shows that through this how deep colonization is in every aspect of our life, and you kind of it kind of shocks you at the beginning, but then it gets to the point where it's like hard to even comprehend how as those perspectives are flipped. So I'll make a link in the show notes. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was a nice native name. Remember that person? He says, "What's this place called? Barbecue Area? Nice native name."
It's native name. It is mine. I like the traditional Aboriginal art of the tradition. I can't even. I have to think about it. It's like the traditional white people art. Is that what it is? There's like graffiti on like the rocks. So good, so good. I want to get deeper into mathematics and the work that you specifically do. And I know when I started my work in Indigenous mathematics. It was called ethnomathematics. And I know there's a lot of names of like land-based math, Indigenous, Aboriginal, cultural, deadly math, which I would love you to also explain to some of the listeners. I guess, what kind of language do you use to describe more land-based cultural mathematics that you do? And I guess, and why?
I've always been a bit wary of these sort of things called that we name in Indigenous science, Indigenous mathematics. I always been a little bit, not because I don't think it exists, but because I feel like the only way we can make our knowledge as important is to put a tag that they will recognise and value. Yeah,
yeah,
and that has always worried me, because what the process then happens is that for non-Indigenous people, and well, show me your science, show me this, and because it doesn't fit with their idea what science and maths is, they go, well, that's just ridiculous, and don't. So what I'm saying there is there's no real pathway to truly understand Aboriginal people if we're just going to carve out bits and pieces and say this is our science and this is our maths and this is our whatever. So I really think what's fundamentally important is to accept mathematics for Australia context, as the mathematics we got from England, and understand it as culturally informed, and that it can be expressed in many, many different ways, these ideas, and then we have our own expressions of what we might call mathematics, but not necessarily having to say that this is our mathematics, that our knowledges have created these things or these understandings, and here's the connection to how they understand this. That's the sort of process I think is more valuable than keep on saying that we have this math. We're the first scientists, we're the first mathematicians is a thing that's happening in Australia at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never stand up and I suppose I'm doing it publicly here. I wouldn't necessarily run anybody down who does that sort of stuff, because I think there is a purpose at this time and place where the only way you can get them to listen is to say those sorts of things, and I know that people embrace it for that.
Yeah.
And at least it might open their ears, even if it is for a little bit. So I don't necessarily want to brush it off, but I personally don't often talk like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to value our people, our knowledges, and then say these are the connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been, I remember starting with, this work with ethnomathematics and thinking it's so othering to say that.
Yes.
But also because at that time, nobody knew what I was talking about. At least like when I said that, there was, oh, okay, it's the other math. That makes no sense. But I kind of understand what you're talking about, and then I think now there's a land-based and Indigenous math is very intertwined, especially within the curriculum here. I'm trying to disconnect those where, in the sense that, yes, our mathematics is informed and learned from the land, but how that land teaches us is very different.
Yes.
So like that's the OG, that's the original mathematics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And can you explain like deadly math, or as you were saying, the deadly coders, for viewers that may not understand that term of awesomeness, because that's what it is.
So you want to understand the word, so the fact that we put deadly in front of everything?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it just means awesome, great, fantastic. So if someone's deadly, they're really good. Sometimes it could mean that you find them a bit attractive as well.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
as meaning, so it's not deadly as in the crocodile deadly, as some people might get a little bit confused. So it just really means something that's really attractive or positive, or
Is it more of an Aboriginal slang?
Yeah. It's more what they call Aboriginal English, I suppose.
Yeah.
We've sort of put our own meaning to certain words.
Yeah.
Even a lot of Aboriginal English follows the structure of traditional Aboriginal languages, but there's a lot of English words in it. there's a whole different range of sort of Aboriginal English, I think.
Yeah.
But it is a very common one, so you'll see it a lot. If you visit Australia, the word deadly will be on a lot of things. Yeah.
It's awesome. I have so many other questions. You kind of touched on it and about, what your work was at the university and how you were, being pulled in so many directions and even what you were talking about with defining, Indigenous or land-based mathematics and other people, devaluing it and saying it's not, this is not real mathematics or science. How do you approach that in your what advice would you give for listeners on, there's a lot of students and teachers that want to do this work and continuously being told that, this isn't real. I have some students that want to, pursue a degree in Indigenous math or science, but, their families, oh, that's not real. Do something else or do a real mathematics degree. What advice would you give for them?
Do you have degrees on them, do you? Do you have a degree in
I mean, my degree is in education, but I just did my own thing. I think that's kind of what we do. Right?
Yeah, because I don't. In Australia, the institutions are trying, but it's still coming from their way of thinking. Put it that way. That what happens within universities. So me personally, like I'll take a question as to how do I deal with people who have these beliefs.
Yeah.
And I've done it in many different contexts. Like even in the job I had at UTS, I was associate dean before I took on this industry professor role. So I had to talk to people about this idea of indigenizing curriculum, whatever a better word is. And you will get a lot of people who will just sit there, like I talked about before, the physicists who just do stuff like with lasers and things. And they'll sit there with their arms folded and say, well, what's this got to do with me?
Yep.
Got nothing to do with me. Yep. And I in that academic world, the tactic I took was that, when you write an ARC grant, which is Australian Research Council grant, you have to justify it being important to this country called Australia, and then I'd say to them, if you are not thinking about Indigenous people within that context, then you're actually saying we're not part of this country. So by saying that, you then have to go and think about what you are doing, how is it going to impact the world, and take that a little bit step further and say, how is it going to impact Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as well? If you can take anything, and there's a lot of our people are writing in technology. Like there's people writing around AI and the way it's going to be used. I'm sure it's the same in Canada as well. So there is a lot of information out there that people can draw on to start to learn this stuff, or to understand the perspective, and bring it into their teaching if they wish to, Also, when I'm talking to these people, I tend to want to. I always think it's fundamentally important to start at the beginning, to put everything into its proper context. And I think that's a real Aboriginal way of thinking about the word for many different Aboriginal people across the world, is that we just don't sit down and say, we're at this point. We'll actually talk through how we got to this point, and then now how we're going to go forward.
Yeah.
So I even go back to the fact that to talk about terra nullius, because I know that a lot of Australia have difficulty embracing our history. There is still a strong myth in Australia that we were only a few people that were in Australia, and if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have this great modern life. So we did you a benefit. All that sort of stuff. So I try and work through all that stuff with them to understand why looking at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the context you're working in is fundamentally important. So that's a sort of tactic that I usually take. I suppose in some sense I'm using their words, you know, I don't like the word against them, but actually reinforcing what they're really saying, and then showing how they're dismissing Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples. And at the same time, think through what would be a good approach to learning about this stuff within the context of teaching. Don't want it to be superficial, no. So we really need to understand who Aboriginal people are, what their knowledges are, what their aspirations are, all this sort of stuff. Just make a meaningful connection between what you're doing. Did I answer your question?
No, absolutely. I think that's, that's the, here we have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That's like the truth, looking back, like what happened, let's be honest about what happened. And then reconciliation, how do we move forward together? Yeah. And I think that, that's building those relationships is what you're saying with the ideas, with history, with self, with land. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little bit cheeky too with the physicists, because they I think there's a reluctance about, because a lot of the people, there's a wording like hard science and soft. I don't know if they call it soft science, but there's a word of hard science.
Yeah.
So hard science in the Western sense is I just do my theoretical stuff, and and I'm super intelligent and no one can understand what I do, but I do my stuff. and that's the hard science stuff. And
and at 5 o'clock, you can close the door and then stop and do your own thing,
exactly,
right? You can just shut it off.
So there's this group of people that are all like that and have difficulty understanding what they're doing fits. So I just said to them, well, next meeting, I want you to watch this video and we'll come back and talk again. So I sent them a video about Maralinga. So Maralinga, have you heard of Maralinga?
Is that what you were mentioning earlier?
No, it's a different one. This is a different one. Maralinga. Okay. Yeah, Maralinga is in South Australia. I think it's in South Australia. I think pretty much sure it is.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember which state it's in, but it doesn't really matter. It's quite an arid area. And what they did is they did a lot of nuclear bomb testings there.
Yeah.
Which has caused a lot of health problems with the community. Also, there is big parcels of land that they just had to put a big fence around and say no one's allowed in these things for the next 10,000 years.
What?
Yeah.
Yep.
So my cheekiness was like, when I got to that next meeting, so last time you told me your work doesn't impact the world. And they said to me, and all I could look at me and said, yeah, okay, I got your point. Let's move on.
Yeah, and you think
there's really interesting. There's really strong disconnect of. It's almost like what I did with my PhD supervisors. They're saying we just do this part. We don't want to connect with the world.
Yeah, so I don't know what I want to know what that does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's those you've given multiple examples of like the nuclear testing and the what was the the mining and the the blowing up sacred sites and whatnot. And these things are happening more often than not, probably most of the time, in on the land that is more connected with. I mean, all land is Aboriginal, Indigenous land, but where the people that are affected most by this are Indigenous peoples, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to teaching and learning, though, I think that's a different game. I think in terms of primary school, high school. In Australia, we have a strong policy. Well, actually, it's not really that strong. We have in our curriculum what they call a cross-curriculum priority. So it's supposed to cut across all subject areas. So the priority is about Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander histories and culture. That's what they named the priority. Even though it's called a priority, the stuff that's in it is not mandatory. It's you do it if you want to. But the interesting is that because they're sitting in the curriculum, a lot of teachers think they have to do it, which is funny. But that's good in a sense, because then they come to you and say, well, how can we do this properly? And because of our history of terra nullius, a lot of people aren't confident. One, because if you grew up in a society that said that these people don't exist and their culture is not important and all that sort of stuff, then you're not really going to know who those people are. And so I get that out of them first. No, you don't really understand. So what you've been taught is going to be some person's perspective on who Aboriginal people are, not actually who Aboriginal people are.
Yeah.
So that fear, that tension still sits quite strongly. So that's where that fear manifests itself. Because they know that we've been marginalised, dispossessed, or attempted genocides in a lot of areas across Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So they know this stuff that's happened. And I suppose what's happening is that they then try and fix it without us talking with us. So it causes this tension all the time. Yeah. And that's where that fear sits. They don't want to walk into that tension because they think they're going to get it wrong. They're going to be called a racist. They're going to be whatever, you know. But I think the thing that I've been saying to a lot of teachers is that we have to look. We can't continue like this. If we're going to have a society where we are both walking together, we have to bridge this gap. So we have this thing called Close the Gap in Australia, where they got these certain measures about our education, health, and so forth that shows disparity between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, and they call this thing the gap. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to education, it's usually seen as just lack of opportunity and things like this. But really, for me, it's a cultural gap because a lot of these teachers come in to teach our kids who have no understanding who our people in our community are. So what's really suffering, what we're really suffering in education, I believe, is the fact that we don't have teachers that are trained to work within these contexts, and also we don't have an education system for our own people that would necessarily allow them to get into becoming teachers, or they want to become teachers, or whatever. So we have a lack of Indigenous teachers in mathematics in particular. As well as we're not training non-Indigenous teachers to work with our people properly. So there is a strong cultural disconnect, is what I call that gap. More than anything to do with our kids, our community, our people, anything like that. So it's a real systemic problem. But then when you start talking about how does Indigenous people connect with mathematics, because of their own personal maths journey, they still believe in that it's just maths, it's just numbers, you just add them together, you know. There's no sort of connections with that. So I think the teaching, and that's where I'm sort of seeing at this point. I'm working with more and more teachers to do this. I've been doing that for a few years, and I think at the moment I want to pull a bit more back on that work and work more with our people. I think that's where the energy should be going more. The trouble is when you're trying to run an organisation is you need to pick up money that can make the organisation survive. So you're sort of caught in this the need to do the real work, but also to make sure the organisation doesn't collapse. But I think for me, there's been a journey for myself to go through all that, to work with non-Indigenous peoples, and I believe that they have learnt a lot from me, which I think, you know, that's what I believe. But then through that journey, I think I've prepared myself more to look at come together with other communities, because I know, for example, I'm going to go to Uluru soon, which is also in the Kimberley, and they've created a curriculum around all their traditional stories, so make sure their kids understand the language and the stories of their country. But what they want me to do is how can we teach maths in connection to all these stories through this whole curriculum structure. So I think those sorts of projects for me are something going to be fundamentally important to make sure that these kids get an education grounded within who they are as Gidja is the name of the people, Gidja kids, but also opening up the door, saying, you know, you have many opportunities here if you choose to learn more about maths or whatever. You know what I mean? So for me, what I had to do to become a mathematician is to turn back on my culture in a sense. I never denied who I was, but I couldn't carry my cultural being into that space, where I'm hoping with this work that if they choose to do maths at whatever level or any other science or anything else, that they don't have to leave that behind. They can actually carry that in with them and be proud of who they are and also work with their communities or whatever they want to do.
Mhm.
So I think that this is why I think that from now on I'm going to be focusing more on that sort of area too. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
I'm unfortunately I see a lot of similarities with what's happening here, you know, with teachers and, you know, that fear that teachers have in doing this work. There's a lot of support specifically here in Alberta for teachers to, you know, it's like on the side of their desk that they have to learn about Indigenous science, mathematics, whatnot. And, you know, I do what I can, but it's, you know, there's a lot of fear in doing it wrong. And usually I think, you know, we have to work together. It's not, I'm trying to clone myself. It's slow. It's a slow process. But it's like, it's worse if we don't do it, is what I say. It's like, if you like, you know, dwell in your humility, let's work on this together. We're going to make mistakes. Let's learn from them together. We're trying to do something. Right. But I think that, and when I'm working with the elders too, and students, there's that question of like, this isn't science and math, STEM. This isn't for me. This isn't, you know, I've never embraced it. Like I told, I can't do this. Just go into the arts. That's what happened to me. I was always told, just, you know, continue in the arts and don't do this work. So it's, I think for the next generation to see themselves and connect, like you were saying, like bring that human back into mathematics and to be able to see yourself in that and to see your culture in math and see your culture and you know, or mathematics in the land. I think that's what we need to do. So keep up the awesome work. I have a question about bringing back, because I think I had a question about bringing together math and culture and those implications for Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people, which I think you've talked about, but also to land. What are the implications for, you know, bringing together math and culture with land?
With country?
Yeah,
land?
Country. Yes, I know. You say country there. I'm going to put a note.
That's right. Cool. Can I just take a little step back first?
Of course. Please.
I think what's really, because most of our kids get taught by non-Indigenous teachers. I'm assuming that happens the same in Canada.
Yeah.
So there is a capacity building to be happening there, but oh God, I'm vague today, Corey.
Capacity building, teachers, math education.
And what do you? Yes, right. I'm connecting it to land. So there's two ways I think you can teach. There's to sort of guide non-Indigenous people into the space. Mm-hmm. One of the strategies that I teach a lot of non-Indigenous teachers is that you can actually create a maths lesson where kids get to actually be creative. But I don't mean creative as in creative thinking, which is often talked about in maths education. I mean creative as in self-expression. Yeah. And one of the first things we did was this maths of storytelling to actually turn something like 3 + 5 into 8, but actually get the kids to create their own whole story around that, represent that in whatever form they want to. But at the same time, what you're emphasizing is that the purpose of what number is in the maths education world, but also the operations is about a movement and an action. And there's only two things happen to maths: things coming together, moving away. And they get the opportunity to really think more deeply about that and create and see how it connects to what they're seeing in the world, to country, to a whole range of things. Now, the important dynamic there too is that teachers have an opportunity then to see what's important for each of those students, or how they think about things, or what culture they bring into that space, and maybe have an opportunity to learn from them and other people when they talk about the work the students are doing. So there's a way of teaching maths even in high school where you can allow this self-expression stuff to teach. And what I'm also seeing is that when you do this type of approach, if you have to take a concept and then think about it and then connect it to country or whatever you're doing, then you really had to understand that idea, because there's no way you're going to be able to do that, connect it to country, and then represent that in some way. So you got a much deeper learning than doing it by rote learning process or whatever. You actually get kids to strongly think about it and see how it builds these connections.
It's a great idea.
Yes. So I think that's and I've also done it with linear equations, the teaching of that, and other teachers have taken up other ways of doing it as well. I've always loved this linear equation one, where one teacher had this. In her words, was a disengaged Year 10 boys group. That was the teacher. Was the class she had, and so she just. I showed her how you could do this sort of creative process to teach linear equations, where they had to. What the process is, they work through an understanding of what the linear equations are, but doing it through patterning, like a growing pattern idea. But then what you're also doing, though, is connecting the meaning of the structure of the equation to what the growing pattern is. And then what you do at the end of that is say, well, I'm going to give you a different one, and you represent something that was a connection to this. So one of the most powerful ones I saw was from this group of disengaged kids, where this one boy really wanted to share his foster care experience. So he did a whole drawing around these two kids that are centered around these two people, and that's something you're never going to see in any maths textbook. That's a thing that he felt like he had to share with the teacher and with the class, and he even asked permission of the teacher whether he could talk about that, and she said, as long as you're comfortable, that's all right with me. Wow. And what I'm trying to say here, that this then actually brings a different dynamic in the classroom, where you actually trusted the students to create something and represent it, share part of who they are, and get a better connection with those students. So she did say that disengagement lowered. It wasn't the solution for everything. At the same time, as she even said that, I can't believe how much they learnt from that process. Yeah. So the conceptual understanding increased, as well as the connection between the student and the teacher. So there is a lot of power and strength in doing that sort of. I don't think you have to do it for everything in math education, but I think if you get a core concept, that's really needed to the students understand, and this is a powerful way to do it. Teachers get scared because it does take time, because you want to give students time to create. You just can't say, I've got 10 minutes to create something, and to give people time.
Colonial time.
Yeah. So it's one of those sort of other ways, I suppose, to build connections. I think in terms of your original question around country, is that and I'm assuming it's the same in Canada, but country is central to knowledge. Yeah, I think you already said that to me. All knowledge comes from country. Is a philosophy we work through. So what you get when you actually have that philosophy, where am I going to go with that? Sorry. All knowledge comes from country. So what we get here in Australia is that we get these complex kingship systems. I don't know if they happen in other parts of the world. I don't know if you've ever seen them. But these complex kingship systems is about building a personal relationship with everything in the world, not just people, but with everything in the world. So you have a personal relationship with all animals, plants, wind, water, stars, moon, sun, everything is all part of that personal connection. So your responsibility in an Aboriginal education system is to understand all those interconnections, but also understand that you're responsible to maintain the strength of those relationships. So the thing that I find interesting about mathematics and our kingship systems is that it has been known for a while, actually, that these kinship systems actually create an abelian group in group theory. So there's a strong connection there because a group in group theory is an algebraic structure. So what I've been doing is looking at how do we maintain, because with the idea of computers and Western stuff influencing a lot of our communities, a lot of kids are not moving away from these systems as well. A lot of communities are. Where I come from, we pretty much have because of the colonization history that we've had. But I suppose part of it is to make sure that when you're teaching within these schools where the kinship systems are maintained really strongly, is that they reinforce themselves and who they are through systems, but also exploring how that massively interconnects with those systems. And I've always thought that mathematics, when you think about mathematics, there's such a strong parallel with it. Because when you think about what mathematics is, and this is the way I like to think about mathematics anyway, is that really it's looking at processes in the world, country, where the connection for mathematics to country is to, because if you take any number like 3 or 4, it's just an idea, yeah. And if you look at 3, it doesn't really connect with anything in the world. So there has to be a process that you have to think about 3 to connect it to that country or to any part of the country. And the way they do it within mathematics is that they measure what 3 means in certain processes. So measuring in some sense is the maths version of connecting the country. So, and then what you do is you get all these different groups of meaning to numbers. So you get like, length, weight, all that sort of stuff, which then turns into speed, velocity, which then turns into connections from the sky down to earth, So there's all these sort of parallels that you can see from the way of thinking of Indigenous peoples through our systems, where we think about all the interconnections from the stars down to earth. And mathematics just has a different version of that same thinking. So what you get in the end is you get these processes represented by certain mathematical expressions. Then you're also looking at relationships between things, which we call equations. So it's a matter of seeing those parallels, connecting them, and put a meaning to what you're doing. And I think there is still a very strong connection between maths and country, wasn't there?
I love that. Yeah, kinship systems. That's, we would say that's within the circle that all my relations that we are related to all as ancestor, from rock to tree to animal. And you made me think of when I was just out a couple of months ago with some youth, and we were building a sweat lodge, and I'm like, okay, come on, let's do some math. I'm like, I don't want to do math. Like, don't worry, I don't want your calculators. I mean, we're in the middle of the mountains. Obviously, you can't do that. But building a lodge, I'm not going to get out a measuring tape to figure out the radius of exactly how far all the points are going to be around the sweat lodge from the center. But I'm like, this is relational. It's relational measurements. It's a connection to like what we need, how big of a lodge we need. What are the willows here today? We are our own standard measurement. You walk out the distance between those pegs with your feet, but you have to continue doing it because you're your own standard measurement. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. What is your hope for the future of math? Last question.
I actually don't know. Quite recently, Australia has put in its. We have this thing called science priorities for our nation. I don't know if it's the same parallel in Canada, and also there's another thing called a science paper. But for the first time in the science priorities, they've written a standalone science priority about elevating and investing in First Nations knowledges around STEM, around science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And also the imperative to have Aboriginal people included within these discussions is across all the other priorities. So I see that as a big step forward for us in our community. I think the future for us as Aboriginal people is because we're still in a rebuilding phase, is the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
We've had this quite aggressive, violent colonisation period that we're still trying to work our way out of from the implications, from the repercussions of that history. And we are still exploring what it means to be an Indigenous people within a lot of these spaces, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's going to benefit us, our people in our communities in the long run. So I suppose my future here is to actually, for one thing, Aboriginal kids across the whole of Australia have an opportunity to have a good education. We actually got a substandard one at the moment. So because of all the systemic problems I talked about before, that's holding our kids back. So I want them to have a good education, but also have the choice to pursue whatever they want to pursue in life. And then at the same time, I think what we need to do as people in Australia is to rebuild our people. Rebuild who we are as Aboriginal people, our communities. And also the whole of Australia was connected. We're all interconnected across Australia. We weren't separate groups, We had different countries, different names for things, and, that was our boundary and borders and that sort of stuff, but we're still very strongly connected. So I see for our future when we're doing these things is that as we grow understanding between the connection between Western knowledges and Indigenous knowledges, finding our place, that we'll build our communities back up again, have our connections across our communities, and also have a much healthier connection to this idea of to the Western system that has imposed itself in Australia. Hopefully from there we actually have a bit of a transformation of what the system is. Well, it's going to have to be. The Western system transforms so that we are walking together and not just included through an equity process. The idea of inclusion just doesn't work because it's still on their terms. So for them to understand our terms and to walk together is one of the things that I really want to do, and that which will then, I think, have greater opportunities for a lot of Aboriginal kids across Australia. I think we do suffer from kids not seeing their future, feeling like they don't have a future. So hopefully the work that we're doing will change that. They have a better understanding how they can be as Aboriginal people in this world and grow themselves and their communities at the same time. Hope that's all right. I've rambled on a bit there.
No, we should take current Alberta government. Can you please take note of what Australia is doing with science? They're trying here, but it's a little token and not. Anyway, we're not going to get into politics, but you were doing great work and, helping the next generation to reconnect with the mathematics of the land and culture and to really see themselves in mathematics. So continue the awesome work. Thank you so much. Okay, we're ready for the lightning round of the Ancestral Science Podcast. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number one, where would you love to visit to learn the mathematics of that land?
Oh, everywhere?
Right? I know.
Is that a good enough answer?
That's it. That's fun. I would say the same thing. I'm curious about the depth of math in Mayan cultures.
Oh yeah.
Aztec. Yeah. What is your favorite food from your ancestral land?
Oh, it's a bit of a toss-up, but I have to say sea mullet have to be my favorite. Sea mullet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I know I didn't say, but we traditionally are dolphin herders. Have you heard of that? Dolphin herders?
No.
So traditionally, unfortunately, the practice is not done anymore. But what our ancestors did was they would be sitting looking for the school run, and usually that was done through Marigimpa, which is the sea eagle as well. It's flying over. And what the men used to do is run down to the water and tap their spears in the water, which signaled the dolphins, and also put out nets, and signaled the dolphins to herd the fish into the nets and drag the net up the water, and then they would go back to the dolphin to thank them and feed them with some food. So usually they were catching sea malt then, or it could be tailor as well. But sea malt is my favourite. Used to grow up on it. Even some of the insides of it, like I'm not quite sure what it is. It might be the stomach, I think, but we call it gumball, and all the rows and melts and stuff. I can't get enough of it.
I'm slowly. Only the last 10-15 years I've been eating seafood. I always thought I was allergic, and I mean I'm from the plains, the mountains, so. I'm making use of I can eat all the delicious seafood. What is your favorite Indigenous movie, TV show, or artist?
So it has to be a TV show?
A movie or TV show or artist, or just want to promote some cool Indigenous humans that are doing cool stuff.
I really like Deborah Mailman in the last. I'm trying to think of the name of the show, but it was about Australian politics.
Oh. I also just want to know more cool Indigenous Australian stuff. So.
Okay. When it comes to music, though, there's the music count. Is Rawampi Band is always going to be my favourite. They were a band in about late 70s, early 80s, I think. One of the very first Aboriginal rock bands that made it. So Rawampi Band.
Rawampi Band.
Worthwhile listening to.
Oh, I'm going to look that up. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Last question. I need to know about the amazing background art.
I should know I should have got the meaning of it, but I don't have the meaning with me. But this was actually from my reconciliation launch that I did with Science Technology Australia. So Science Technology Australia is one of the peak bodies in Australia that looks at the connection between science policy and scientists. So I've been on the board for a couple of years now to get more Indigenous involvement within that space. So this is their RAP plan, art, and I could find it and dig up the meaning, and we can share that with everybody. So I should have known the meaning. So sorry about that.
Sure, yeah, let me know and I can link it. Is it true that it's a map? Usually, it's like a map and a story.
Yeah. Usually they are. It definitely is a meeting place because you can actually see the sort of U marks just above my head, not on the outside of that circle.
Yeah,
up there. So they're people sitting down around a circle. So there'll be like a meeting place for some significant business, and these other circles would represent, other sites around that area, most likely. But there would be a stronger story than what I'm saying there with all that. But yeah.
Good. Well, we'll dig it up and we'll link it. So.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Hand to heart for your time, your wisdoms, and your stories here today. To all of our listeners, check out ATSIMA website, atsima.com. We'll put the link in the show notes. I think that was right. Again, the show notes, there's lots of references for all you educators and curious minds and hearts if you want to learn a little bit more or a lot more about what Chris has shared today. As always, a free way to support is to like, follow, share, and rate anywhere that you get your podcast. Also, thanks to the talent of Emil Starlight of Limelight Multimedia, who always makes us sound great here, and marketing production support from Alex Flett, and support from Bespoke Production Hub. So with that, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.